you sure?
People in my town like to say history didn't matter, especially if there was money to be made. I learned how wrong that was the day I got a call about my grandfather's land. "Mr. Carter," the voice on the phone said. "This is Daniel from Ridgeview Estates HOA. We're calling to inform you about a development expansion project." I almost hung up. HOAs didn't call people like me unless they wanted something. "What kind of expansion?" I asked. "A minor one," he said casually. "We're extending the golf course. It will increase property values for the entire community." I leaned back in my chair. "And what does that have to do with me?" There was a pause. "The expansion overlaps with a small parcel under your name. We assumed you'd be willing to cooperate." That word, cooperate, always meant trouble. "What parcel?" I asked slowly. "An unused piece of land on the east side," he replied. "It's not developed, and frankly, it's been neglected for years." Neglected? That word hit harder than it should have, because I knew exactly what land he was talking about. It wasn't unused. It was a cemetery. I drove out there that same afternoon. The place looked exactly how I remembered it, quiet, fenced, and tucked away behind a line of old oak trees. No flashy signs. No polished marble gates. Just simple headstones, some worn by time, others barely legible. "My grandfather used to bring me here when I was a kid. Respect the past," he'd say, "because one day, someone will decide if you matter too." At the time, I didn't understand. Now I did. I stepped out of my truck and walked through the rusted gate. The grass had grown taller than usual, but the graves were still there, lined in neat rows, each one telling a story most people had forgotten. Except me. I recognized names. Neighbors. Workers. Families who built this town before Ridgeview Estates even existed. And at the center of it all, my great-grandparents. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. Bright orange spray paint. Marked lines. Survey stakes. They weren't planning anything. They had already started. I didn't waste time. The next morning, I showed up at the HOA office. The building was exactly what you'd expect. Glass walls, polished floors, and people who looked like they had never stepped foot on real dirt. Daniel greeted me with a practiced smile. "Mr. Carter, glad you came in." I didn't shake his hand. "You're expanding your golf course over a cemetery." He didn't even flinch. "It's not an active cemetery," he said. "There haven't been burials there in decades." "That doesn't make it empty. It makes it unused," he corrected. I stared at him. "You're talking about people," I said quietly. "And we're talking about land value." He replied just as calmly. That's when I realized something. They didn't just not care. They genuinely believed they were right. "Let me make this simple," Daniel continued. "We're offering compensation. More than fair market value, considering the condition of the property. I'm not selling." His smile tightened slightly. "You might want to reconsider. The community has already approved the expansion. Without my permission, the legal details are being handled." That wasn't an answer. That was a warning. I left without another word. But I didn't go home. I went straight to the county records office. If they thought they could just take that land, they either knew something I didn't, or they were hoping I didn't know anything at all. Turns out, it was the second one. The clerk pulled up the documents and turned the screen toward me. "Your family owns the land outright," she said. "No liens. No shared ownership. It's all under your name. Any easements?" I asked. She shook her head. "None that would allow development like that." I felt something shift. "Can they do anything without my consent?" "Not legally," she said. "Especially not on land classified as a burial site." That word again. Burial site. Not unused land. Not development space. A cemetery. Protected. Or at least, it was supposed to be. When I got back to the property later that day, I realized just how far they had already gone. A section of the fence had been torn down. Heavy tire tracks cut through the grass. And at the far end, a bulldozer, parked right next to a row of graves. I walked toward it slowly, each step heavier than the last. Then I saw it. Fresh dirt. A headstone, pushed over. Something inside me snapped. "Hey!" My voice echoed across the field. Two workers turned around, startled. "You can't be here," one of them said quickly. "This area is under development." "No," I said, walking closer. "This area is under my ownership." They exchanged looks. "We were told everything was cleared." "By who?" I demanded. "The HOA." "Of course. I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures. The broken fence, the tire tracks, the disturbed graves. Every single detail. What are you doing? The other worker asked nervously. Documenting, I said. Because when this goes to court, I want everything on record. That got their attention. You should talk to management, one of them said. Oh, I will, I replied. And a lawyer. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I was angry, but because I was thinking. Carefully. Strategically. Because this wasn't just about stopping them. It was about making sure they never tried something like this again. By morning, I had a plan. And it wasn't just going to hurt them. It was going to shake their entire community. The next time Daniel saw me, I wasn't there to argue. I was there to end it. And he had no idea what was coming. The next time I walked into the Ridgeview Estates HOA office, I wasn't angry. That would have been easy. No, this time I was calm. And that's what made it dangerous. Daniel looked up from his desk as I entered, the same polished smile ready on his face. Mr. Carter, he said, I was hoping you'd come back so we could finish what you started. I interrupted. His smile thinned slightly. I was going to say resolve this amicably. I pulled a folder out of my bag and placed it on his desk. Good, I said. Because I brought something you're going to want to see. He glanced down, still confident. That confidence disappeared the second he opened it. Inside were printed photos. High resolution. Time-stamped. Every angle of the damage. The broken fence. The bulldozer tracks. The overturned headstone. And most importantly, the disturbed graves. Daniel flipped through them slower and slower, his jaw tightening with each page. This doesn't prove anything, he said finally, but his voice had changed. It proves trespassing, I replied calmly. It proves destruction of a burial site. And depending on how deep your crew dug, I leaned forward slightly. It might prove something a lot worse. He didn't respond. So I continued. I also visited the county records office. I added. Turns out, you don't have a single legal right to that land. You're in the process of breaking multiple laws. I cut in. And I haven't even gotten to the interesting part yet. Now I had his full attention. I pulled out another document and slid it toward him. This, I said, is a historical designation request. He frowned. What is this supposed to be? It's already been submitted, I said. That unused land you keep talking about? It qualifies as a protected historical burial ground. He looked up sharply. You can't just do that overnight. I didn't, I said. My grandfather started the paperwork years ago. I just finished it. That wasn't entirely true. But it didn't need to be. What mattered was that it was valid. And once approved, everything changed. Daniel leaned back in his chair, trying to regain control. Even if that goes through, he said, it doesn't change the fact that this development is already underway. I almost smiled. That's actually the best part. I reached into my bag one more time and pulled out a final sheet. A legal notice. Stamped. Filed. Delivered. I filed for an immediate injunction, I said. His expression froze. That means, I continued, all construction activity stops. Effective immediately. That's not. It's already in motion, I said. And if your crew steps foot on that land again. I paused, letting it sink in. You're looking at criminal charges. Silence filled the room. For the first time since I walked in. Daniel didn't have anything to say, but I wasn't done. Not even close. You should have stopped, I said quietly. The moment I told you what that land was. He swallowed, his confidence cracking. We didn't think. I know, I said. That's the problem. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. But don't worry, I added. I'm not here to destroy your golf course. That caught him off guard. You're not. I looked him straight in the eye. No, I said. I'm here to destroy something much bigger. Over the next few days, everything started moving. Fast. The injunction went through without resistance. Construction stopped. Equipment disappeared. Workers were pulled off-site. And just like that, the expansion project froze. But that wasn't what shook Ridgeview Estates. Not really. What shook them was what came next. Because while the HOA was busy trying to contain the situation, I was digging deeper into their records, their bylaws, their contracts, and most importantly, their land agreements. Most people don't realize how HOAs actually work. They think it's just rules about lawns and fences. But the truth is, it's all about control. And control always comes with paperwork. A lot of it. It took me 2 nights to find what I was looking for. Buried deep in their founding documents. A clause. One small clause that changed everything. Ridgeview Estates wasn't built the way most neighborhoods are. The entire community sat on land that was originally part of a larger private estate. That estate had been divided, sold, and developed over time. But not all of it. One section, the section that included the cemetery, had never been transferred. It stayed in my family, passed down, quietly, legally, completely overlooked. And here's where things got interesting. The HOA didn't actually own the land under the entire neighborhood. They only controlled it through a master agreement. An agreement that depended on something very specific. Shared access rights, roads, utilities, drainage, land use permissions, all tied together in one fragile legal structure. And guess what? A key portion of those shared rights ran directly through my property. I sat back in my chair, staring at the document, reading it again and again, just to be sure. Then I started smiling, because they hadn't just made a mistake. They had built their entire community on an assumption that no one would ever challenge them. They were wrong. The next morning, I made a few calls. First, to a lawyer. Not just any lawyer. One who specialized in property disputes and HOA litigation. I sent him everything. The photos. The records. The clause. He called me back an hour later. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "Does it matter?" I replied. There was a pause. Then, "This is big," he said. "Bigger than I think you realize." "I realize enough," I said. "Can it be used?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Yes," he said finally. "If we play this right, this could give you leverage over the entire community." That's exactly what I wanted to hear. "Good," I said. "Because I don't want a settlement." "What do you want?" I looked out the window, toward the direction of Ridgeview Estates. "I want control," I said. And then, I made my next move. A formal notice. Delivered to every single homeowner in Ridgeview Estates. Not just the HOA. Everyone. It was simple, clear, and impossible to ignore. Due to unauthorized use and damage of privately owned land, all shared access rights crossing said property are under immediate legal review. That one sentence did more damage than anything else I had done. Because suddenly, this wasn't just an HOA problem anymore. It was everyone's problem. Within hours, my phone started blowing up. Calls, voicemails, emails, confused residents, angry homeowners, panicked board members, because they all understood what that notice meant, even if they didn't want to admit it. If those access rights were revoked, roads could be restricted, utilities could be challenged, property values would collapse, and all of it, because of one decision, to build over something they thought didn't matter. That evening, Daniel called me. No confidence this time. No polished tone. Just tension. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Fixing a mistake," I replied. "You're dragging the entire community into this." I didn't hesitate. "You already did that," I said. Silence. Then, "What do you want?" he asked. I leaned back in my chair. Exactly where I wanted him. "This isn't a negotiation anymore," I said calmly. "It's a consequence." And for the first time since this started, they understood. This wasn't about land, or money, or a golf course. It was about something they should have respected from the beginning. And now, they were going to pay for it. But the real damage hadn't even started yet. Because in part 3, I wasn't just going to challenge their authority. I was going to take it away completely. By the time the sun came up the next morning, Ridgeview Estates was already in chaos. Not the loud kind. Not yet. This was quieter, more dangerous. The kind of chaos that spreads through whispers, group chats, and emergency meetings behind closed doors. Because every homeowner had received the notice. And now, they were all asking the same question. Can he actually do this? Inside the HOA office, panic had officially replaced arrogance. Daniel wasn't sitting comfortably behind his desk anymore. He was pacing, phone pressed to his ear, voice tight. "No, you don't understand," he said. "If access rights are challenged, we're looking at potential." "Yes, I know, but we need a workaround." He stopped mid-sentence. Because he saw me walk in. He ended the call immediately. "We need to talk." I didn't sit. "You had your chance to talk," I replied. "This has gone too far," he said, trying to regain control. "You're threatening hundreds of families." I looked around the room. Clean, modern, controlled. Everything they thought they had built. "You should have thought about that," I said, "before you started digging up graves." His jaw tightened. "We didn't dig up graves." I held his gaze. "Do you want me to bring the photos into court?" I asked quietly. That was enough. Tell me what you want, he said again, this time with no resistance left. I let the silence sit for a moment. Not for drama, but because this was the moment everything shifted. I'm activating a full legal review of all shared access agreements, I said. Until that's complete, no one is guaranteed use of any land that crosses my property. That will destroy this community, he said. No, I replied. Your decisions did that. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration breaking through. You're punishing people who had nothing to do with this. I shook my head. They chose you, I said. They trusted you to act responsibly. I stepped closer. You didn't. That's when the first cracks spread beyond that office. Because while Daniel was trying to contain the damage, the residents were starting to turn on each other. Emergency HOA meetings were called. Arguments broke out. Voices raised. Blame thrown. Some homeowners demanded answers. Others demanded refunds. A few, smart ones, started calling lawyers. Because they knew something most people didn't. HOAs only look powerful until the legal structure behind them starts to collapse. And Ridgeview's structure was already cracking. By the end of the week, the situation escalated. Fast. My lawyer filed the next step, a formal challenge to the shared access framework. The argument was simple and devastating. The HOA had violated the terms of their own agreement by trespassing on protected land, causing damage to a burial site, acting without legal ownership or consent. That breach gave me the right to do something they never expected. Suspend access rights. Not permanently. Not yet. But enough to create a legal nightmare. And that's exactly what happened. City officials got involved. Inspectors showed up. Legal notices were issued. Suddenly, road usage was under review. Drainage systems were questioned. Utility lines crossing disputed zones were flagged. Everything slowed down. Then, started to break. Garbage collection stopped in certain areas. Maintenance services paused. Contractors refused to enter without legal clearance. And the residents? They started to panic. Because for the first time since they moved into Ridgeview Estates, their perfect neighborhood didn't feel secure anymore. It felt fragile. I didn't need to say anything. The pressure was doing the work for me. 3 days later, Daniel showed up at my door. Not in a suit. Not with confidence. Just tired. We're ready to fix this, he said. I didn't invite him in. You already had that chance. This is different, he insisted. The board is willing to reverse the expansion, restore the land, cover all damages. I crossed my arms. That's not enough. His expression tightened. What else do you want? I looked past him, toward the direction of Ridgeview Estates. The manicured lawns. The expensive homes. The golf course they cared more about than history. You don't get to erase what you did, I said. So what? This just continues, he asked. Until everything collapses? I met his eyes. That depends on you. He exhaled slowly. Say it. And this time, I did. I want full dissolution of the current HOA leadership, I said. Every board member involved in the decision, removed. His eyes widened slightly. That's not something I can just. You can't, I cut in, or this gets worse. I didn't stop there. I want a legally binding protection order placed on that cemetery, I continued. Permanent. No development. Ever. He nodded slowly. Done. And one more thing. This was the part that mattered most. I want control over the shared access agreements moving forward. That hit him harder than anything else. That would give you leverage, I finished. Yes. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. You're asking to control the entire community, he said quietly. I didn't deny it. I'm asking to make sure this never happens again. He looked down, thinking, calculating, realizing, because he understood something now that he didn't before. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about power, and he had already lost it. I'll take it to the board, he said finally. I stepped back and opened the door wider. You don't have much time. He didn't argue. He just left. The next 48 hours were the longest Ridgeview Estates had ever experienced. Meetings ran late into the night. Lawyers went back and forth. Residents demanded action. And one by one, the board members started stepping down. Not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. By the third day, the decision was made. They agreed to everything. Full leadership removal, legal protection of the cemetery, restoration of the land, and most importantly, a restructured access agreement. One that put control exactly where it should have been from the start, with the person who actually owned the land. Me. The announcement went out that evening. Ridgeview Estates HOA would be undergoing immediate restructuring. That was the official version. The real version? They had been forced to surrender, and everyone knew it. A week later, I went back to the cemetery. The fence had been repaired. Properly this time. The disturbed graves were restored. Carefully. Respectfully. New markers had been placed where needed. And for the first time since this started, it was quiet again. The way it was supposed to be. I walked through the rows slowly, reading the names. Remembering. When I reached my great-grandparents' graves, I stopped. For a moment. I just stood there. Then I nodded. Not because I had won, but because I had done what should have been done from the beginning. Protected something that mattered. Behind me, in the distance, I could see the edge of the golf course. Still there. Still running. But smaller now. Careful. Respectful. The way it should have been all along. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. You didn't just stop them, you changed everything. I looked back one last time. Maybe I did. Or maybe, I just reminded them of something they should have never forgotten. Some land isn't just land. And some lines. You don't cross.